Discovery Reading. Today we're going to be talking about African animals today. We're going to be reading two books. Hopefully the echo isn't too big in here. We're in the atrium. So we're going to be talking about elephants and rhinos. So first let's talk about the books that we're going to be reading. And our video is not going to let us turn the words around today, so I'm sorry about that. But it's African Rhinos by Kristen Nelson, and then also Little Elephant's Trunk by Hazel Lincoln. So these are the books that we're going to be reading today. We'll give everybody just a second to tune in for those who are going to. But yes, again, as always, if you're watching this not live, feel free to still comment and we'll get out to your comments and answer your questions. We appreciate everybody who's just been leaving all the thank yous. We see those and we thank you guys for watching. But let's start. So, this book is called African Rhinos by Kristen Nelson, and we're reading it with permission from Learner Publishing today. So that's what this looks like. What kind of animal has wrinkled skin and sharp horns? This is a rhinoceros. It is also called a rhino. Rhinos live in Asia and Africa. This is an African rhino. Do you know any other animals that live in Africa? Rhinos are some of the largest mammals in the world. Most African rhinos weigh more than a car. All mammals have hair. African rhinos have hair on their tails and the tips of their ears. African rhinos have thick skin. It is brown or gray. They also have two horns on their head. A few have horns that are as tall as your teacher. A rhino's horn is made of keratin. Your hair and fingernails are also made of keratin. Some African rhinos use their horns to pull down tree branches to eat. Other rhinos use their horns to dig up grass. Rhinos are herbivores. Herbivores eat only plants. A rhino uses its mouth to grab food. Black rhinos have a pointed upper lip. The rhino's lip pulls leaves and twigs into its mouth. This kind of rhino is called a white rhino. It has a wide mouth that helps it graze on grass. Listen, do you hear a sound? This rhino hears something moving in the bushes. The rhino hears an enemy. A rhino charges if an enemy gets too close. The rhino runs toward the animal to scare it off. Rhinos run fast on 4 strong legs. Each foot has 3 big toes. A rhino runs on its toes like a horse. Look, this young rhino is practicing how to run. A baby rhino begins to walk just a few hours after it's born. A baby rhino is called a calf. Okay. A calf is born with 2 spots of thick skin on its head. Its horns will grow from these spots. Like all mammals, a rhino calf drinks milk from its mother. Soon the rhino mother teaches her calf where to find other food. She also shows it how to stay safe. A calf usually leaves its mother when it's about 3 years old. Then the calf is ready to live on its own. Some rhinos live in small groups. These groups are called herds. Why are these rhinos rolling around in the mud? The weather in Africa is hot. These rhinos are trying to stay cool. Rhinos also drink lots of water and try to stay in the shade. How do you stay cool? The hot sun makes rhinos tired. This African rhino is ready for a long afternoon nap. map of Africa. Where do African rhinos live? And there's our rhino. Perfect. So, really quick. That book mentioned two different types of rhinos, the white rhino and also the black rhino. Sometimes when we talk about elephants or elephants that are out in like the Sahara, they're all just bush elephants, bush African elephants, but there are some different species of rhinos. Here at the museum, the one that we have in the atrium, although it is kind of dark gray, it is actually a white rhino. The black rhinos are the ones that are in the more northern Sahara desert. So this is a cross section of the pelt of a white rhino. You can see it's kind of dark gray, so the color of the name doesn't really have anything to do with the way that they look. They look quite similar. But the black rhino, the ones at least in the Sahara, are a threatened species. So one unique thing that they're doing in Africa is they're taking those black rhinos or those Saharan desert rhinos and taking them down to the Kunene, and they're trying to have them adapt into that ecosystem, that place where they live, so that they can repopulate the black rhino, the black Saharan rhino. So again, yeah, this is the white rhino pelt. You can see how tough it is. It is slightly textured. Bring it as close as we can so you can kind of imagine what it feels like, and it's quite heavy. Like the book said, rhinos are can be about the weight of a car, so their skin is also very thick to protect them. And just in thinking about their size, this is a white rhinoceros foot. So when you would look at this, you would see, okay, this rhino can be so tall. Our rhino that's here at the museum is maybe as tall as a car, but definitely not as long, right? So the horns on a rhino do grow its entire life. And so in the book, when it says that a horn could be as tall as your teacher, it really could. As soon as they're born, they begin to grow. It talked about those two spots being where their horns would come in, and they continue throughout their whole life. So as long as they live, they're still growing. Just like us with keratin in our nails, our fingernails grow our whole life. And their horns are also made of keratin. So, same thing, just like their toenails as well. So this is also a white rhinoceros foot. I'll bring back out the book and show you the black rhinoceros. This one. So slightly distinct, but not as much. Kind of hard to tell. One cool thing that we see, and we're going to talk about a little bit more when we look at elephants and rhinos, is sometimes when you see on YouTube or on the internet, sometimes these rhinos and elephants have pink horns. And one of the reasons why these animals are threatened is because poachers, sorry, there's a little background noise today. Poachers want to cut off these horns and use them and sell them for trophies. So what they'll do is they'll dye them pink and make them less desirable, because at that point they're ruined. So that's something that's definitely worth a Google to see. Okay. Our next book is called Little Elephant's Trunk by Hazel Lincoln, and we're reading this with permission from the Hazel Lincoln Company. So, all over the land there was a great excitement. It was springtime, and springtime meant babies. Babies everywhere. The chimpanzee's baby clung tightly to its mother. The tortoise baby struggled out of its shell. The giraffe's baby nuzzled its face against its mother's. The hippo baby took straight to the water. The zebra's baby hid in the grass, and the springbok's baby ran and ran. The elephants had a new baby too. The whole family rumbled with pleasure as they gazed lovingly upon little elephant. Little Elephant took his first wobbly steps and fell. Something long and gray was tripping him up. He struggled to see his feet, and it happened again, but now his mother was calling. The herd was going to the river. Little Elephant hurried alongside his mother, stumbling as he tried to keep up. He slipped down the riverbank and fell with a loud splash into the water. He looked down, a face looked back at him, and something odd dangled in the middle of the face. The strange thing was a trunk. Then he realized he was looking at himself, at his own reflection. What was the strange dangling thing for? Little Elephant didn't know, but he did know that he was thirsty. The zebra was drinking the water, but Little Elephant couldn't do that. His trunk got in the way. He looked at the big elephants. They dipped their trunks into the water, put them into their mouths, and drank. Little Elephant dipped his trunk into the water, put it into his mouth, and sucked carefully. The cool water was so good. Now the sun was burning down. The tortoise was shaded by his shell, but Little Elephant didn't have a shell. He looked at the big elephants. They were using their trunks to spray water over their backs. This looked like fun. Little Elephant trumpeted with delight as he joined the elephant shower, but now the herd was moving to their feeding ground on the far side of the river. Little Elephant followed his mother, but the water was very, very deep, and it kept getting into his trunk. In panic, he scrambled back to the bank. The chimp swung across the river on vines, but Little Elephant didn't have any hands. He looked at the big elephants. They all had their trunks sticking up out of the water. They were breathing by snorkeling. Little Elephant crashed into the water, thrust his trunk toward the sky, and paddled happily to the other side. When he came out of the river, he sank into the thick, deep mud. The mud felt good in the hot sun, and he longed to cover his body with it. The hippos, with their short legs, wallowed in the mud, but Little Elephant's legs were too long. He looked at the big elephants. They picked up large dollops of mud with their trunks and threw it over their backs. Little Elephant tried it. He splattered cool mud over himself. It felt wonderful. The herd was on the move again, pushing their way through the long grass. The grass was so high that Little Elephant couldn't see where he was going. He was afraid that he would lose his mother. The springboks leaped over the grass with their graceful legs as they followed their mothers, but Little Elephant's legs were thick and heavy. They were not made for jumping. He looked at the big elephants. They walked in a long line with Grandmother in the lead. Using its trunk, each elephant held the tail of the one in front. Quickly, Little Elephant lifted his trunk and grasped his mother's tail. Now he felt safe. At last, the elephants reached the feeding ground. Little Elephant spotted some juicy-looking leaves, but they were just out of reach. The giraffes with their long necks nibbled delicately at the leaves, but Little Elephant's neck was very short. He looked at the big elephants. They curled their trunks around the leaves and tore them off and put them in their mouths. After a little practice, he could reach the lowest leaves with ease. Delicious. The sun had started to dip below the horizon. It had been a long day for Little Elephant. He was very tired. He snuggled up close to his mother and felt something gently stroking him. It was her trunk. He curled his trunk around his mother's. What a very useful thing a trunk is after all, thought the little elephant. Okay, so again, we learned a lot about trunks in this one. First, when we talk about trunks, we have to remember here, we can kind of look at this one a little bit. They're actually, we often say they're like a straw. They are like a straw. We have to remember they're connected to their nose. So when they're drawing water up out of the river, they're holding it there and then putting it into their mouths. They're not just slurping it through because it's just long nose. So similar to our rhino, these horns are also a big source of poaching as well, the tusks, actually, excuse me. But these tusks are not made of keratin like the horn is of the rhino. They're actually made of ivory. So that's where they get that very shiny white appearance from. Okay, in comparison to size, again, let's look at the elephant's foot. Okay, this is an elephant's foot, so you can see how big it is, kind of how big the base of it is to support that body. Elephants are massive. They are the largest land animal on the earth, and they're also some of the oldest. They can live to be up to 70 years old, which is so cool. And they have amazing memory. Sometimes elephants even make great migrations depending on how the drought season goes. This isn't always necessary. Sometimes their migration can be 12 miles, but in tougher seasons it could be up to 65. So these animals are smart and they know their terrain, and they are very family oriented, and they are led by a matriarch, as it said was in the book. The grandmother, there is a matriarch who leads the herd. Elephant bulls are not around all the time. Okay, cool. One last thing that I wanted to say was that elephants and rhinos are both mammals. And one thing that is distinct about mammals is we think about fur or hair. It doesn't really look like the elephant has any fur or hair on its body, but this is its tail. And these really wire-like bristles are considered hair. And so same thing with the rhino. They don't look like they have hair on them either, but as that first book said, they have hair on the top of their ears, and they also have it on their eyelashes and on their tail. And so the elephant has it also in those places, not on the ears though, on the tail, on the eyelashes. And when you look closely next time when the museum is open, you can look really close at our elephant here and see that on the back legs and kind of on the sides, there's tiny little hairs that are there. You can't really see them from far away, but especially when you look at the hind legs of the elephant, there's tiny little hairs that are there. So that is our chat today about elephants and rhinos and our discovery reading. Tune in next Thursday to read again at 11. Feel free to share this video and let your friends know so that we will still be doing readings all throughout the summer, even though the school year has ended. So again, feel free to drop your comments below and we will get to them. Thank you guys so much. See you next week.